Should you be buying low on Tennessee Titans wide receiver Treylon Burks? All that and more this episode of Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. We are continuing with our AFC South previews. We're finishing up with the Tennessee Titans today. And before we get into our buys, sells, and holds, Kate, this is an offense that's really hard to project and think about going forward because there's some really young pieces at wide receiver, tight end, and then there's some old players at quarterback and running back. So what are just your general thoughts on this Titans team going into the season?
I'm not really looking to invest heavily. So like we talked about the Houston Texans, right? Which I think is a team that a lot of people maybe aren't projecting to be a top tier team, like maybe even this year. I feel more strongly, but I see the direction. My struggle with the Tennessee Titans is that I don't see the offensive direction. I don't see where they're headed because it feels like there's a lot of different components that they need to figure out before we can have a realistic picture of what this offense is going to look like long term. Like you have Derrick Henry, who ranks third in scrimmage touches among all active running backs. He's getting older. You've got, a young wide receiver one who I don't think is ready to really assume the role of a true alpha wide receiver one. And then you have questions at quarterback and like potentially, you've got Ryan Tannehill, who's been, you've seen flashes, but then behind him, lots of question marks. Is it Malik Willis? Like what is going on?
It's not Malik Willis. It's probably going to be Will Levis, right?
Is it? And like we've heard reports that he struggled. Of course, he's a rookie. So like there's plenty of time to go. But my struggle with this team and my lack of investment in this team from a dynasty perspective largely comes from the fact that I can't project the direction of this offense. And maybe that makes some of these players a buy low.
I think so. And let's start with Treylon Burks, who I think is a buy this offseason. I was telling you actually earlier this morning that I just bought him in a different dynasty league, traded for him. I think he's a buy low for a bunch of different reasons. The first is that, this is basically the cheapest he's been in a long time. His overall ADP is 46. It's actually up a little bit from May, but 46 overall. He's wide receiver, I believe, 23, 24 on Dynasty League football, and it's just all upside, right? He's the clear-cut number one option in this passing attack. I thought he looked pretty good as a rookie. You look at some of the advanced numbers from PFF, 82nd percentile receiving grade versus single coverage, 60th percentile in separation percentage, 84th percentile in yards after the catch per reception, and 75th percentile in yards per route run. We just need to see him on the field more. And I think he got hurt in a game against Philadelphia early in the season where he caught a touchdown, got a concussion, and I don't think he was quite the same after that, but we know he's got fantastic size. He's good after the catch, and he's cheap. Why not?
That's definitely where he flourishes. And you look at, just overall his performance at the combine, like, a 4.55 40-yard dash doesn't jump off the page immediately. And then all of a sudden you remember he's 6'2", 225 pounds, and you realize, dang, like he's got speed. He's physical. He's one of my favorite players that is active in the NFL right now to watch after the catch. Like he feels like once he has the ball in his hands, he looks like a running back out there because he's so physical. He just needs to be in the right situation to succeed. Last year, he also wasn't. I don't think he was necessarily conditioned for a full NFL season.
I compare him to Quentin Johnston, who went in the first round of this year's NFL draft, and they're being drafted fairly similarly, but Burks played in the SEC, was more productive, ran a very similar 40-yard dash time, despite being 17 pounds heavier, was more dynamic after the catch. And he went higher in the NFL draft. Not that matters too much when you're talking about a couple spots, but this is somebody that we really liked a year ago. We saw him flash as a rookie, and now you can still get him outside of the top 20, 22 receivers. Kate, is there a chance that he's the guy that gets 145 targets in this Titans offense, and maybe the efficiency drops a little bit, but just based on sheer volume, he's somebody that is fantasy relevant this year?
He is a player that I think like the floor for fantasy, if you will, like envision the season that we just saw from Deontay Johnson, right? Like it has had 3 straight seasons with 140 plus targets, hasn't always been efficient with those targets. And I think that's kind of what you're looking at with Treylon Burks. But because of that target volume, still finished, or I think at wide receiver 28 this past season.
With 0 touchdowns.
With 0 touchdowns. And I think that's kind of the floor that you're probably looking at for Treylon Burks.
I agree.
And I do think the ceiling is, relatively high. But what I really want to see, Marcus, like I feel like I keep going back to this, and I'm going to keep going back to this until the Titans actually get some personnel where they can deploy my advice, but get Treylon Burks back into the slot. Get him in situations, where he can create some huge mismatches based on his size speed combo. Get the ball in his hands and just let him make plays after the catch, because I don't think on the outside is necessarily where he's seen his success. I think his ability to play out of the slot with his size speed combo, like that is what got him drafted as highly as he did. Let's remember that the Titans basically traded AJ Brown for Treylon Burks. And we can talk about the merits of that trade all day long, but that's how invested this team was in Burks as a prospect. So the draft capital is there. Everything that you want is there. I think this probably is the buy now window, because we're talking endlessly about other second year wide receivers, and I feel like Burks has kind of gotten lost in that conversation because some of those asthma clips from last year, like we can't hold that against.
You look at like where Drake London, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson are being ranked and drafted inside of in Dynasty League football. Those guys are all top 12 receivers already, right? And Olave and Wilson are top 7 receivers. And then there's Jahan Dotson, who a lot of people are excited about. George Pickens, his ADP. I saw our guy Ryan just tweet about it a couple of days ago. He was inside the top 30 overall players at the end of the year last year, which I think is insane. But there's just so many other guys out there. Christian Watson, right? We're excited about all these second-year receivers, and it feels like Treylon Burks is the guy that's getting
out.
Yeah, and the thing for me is I think the Titans are going to be more creative in the ways they get him the ball. You mentioned playing him out of the slot. One of the reasons why people liked him so much coming out of Arkansas was his ability to, play running back, and you can give him jet sweeps and you can just get him the ball and he's going to be able to, make plays. So I won't be surprised if they figure out a way or try to figure out a way for him to get 115, 120 touches this year, just because after Derrick Henry, who we're going to talk about in a second, he's their best player in offense, right? I don't even think it's all that close.
You literally probably couldn't name the wide receivers beyond wide receiver 3 on the Titans, and that's for very good reason, Marcus. So the potential is there, and I think that if nothing else, they don't have a ton of options. Like it feels like Treylon Burks are bust this year, or maybe Derrick Henry and bust, but how that translates to their long-term, offensive scheme, it will TBD.
All right, let's talk about Derrick Henry, who we just mentioned before, finished 3rd in the NFL, or actually 2nd in the NFL in rushing yards last year. Does he still have that potential ceiling going into year 9 or year 7? I guess it would be year 7 now, right? 2016 going into year 7. We'll talk about that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets win or lose. It's absolutely fantastic. That is $200 that you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-unders to who you think is going to get the first home run, all in an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. What's better than that? There is no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Kate, we are back talking about the Tennessee Titans. We just want to remind everybody on Monday's show, we're going to be off on Friday. On Monday's show, we're going to be talking about the Denver Broncos as we get ready to preview the AFC West. What a wild division that is. And that Broncos team is going to be fascinating to watch this year. But let's talk about Derrick Henry. Finished second in the NFL in rushing yards last year. Still one of the most productive backs in the NFL. But he's going to be 29 this year. What are you doing with him in Dynasty?
I am selling Derrick Henry, though. Again, I'm going to give the caveat that, of course, if you're in a win now situation, it probably not the time to move on from Derrick Henry. But if you are in one of these, stages of your team where you're kind of in flux between, being a staunch competitor and rebuild mode, this is probably the time to sell. And I'm not saying that Derrick Henry can't do it, right? He's one of 8 players in NFL history to average more than 20 rush attempts for 4 straight seasons on a minimum of 20 or 200 carries per season. He is one of 12 players to have 300 rush attempts in an age 29 or greater season. Like, he's an anomaly. He is a crazy person, right? But like, generally speaking, when you're looking at, the players that have accomplished such feats, after they end that streak, maybe this is, Derrick Henry's last year where he has 200 plus carries, average, 20 plus rush attempts per game. If this is the last season, history tells us, generally speaking, that that's where the cliff is. And looking at Eric Dickerson, Emmitt Smith, Edgerrin James, Eddie George, Walter Payton, Earl Campbell, there's a lot of evidence, and there's a couple of outliers in that group that defy the odds. And of course, Derrick Henry could be, he could be one of those to defy the odds, but that would be a true anomaly. I think I'm not going to sell you on the merits of Derrick Henry as a running back. We know what he is, but it's when is the time to bow out. And I think this offseason more than ever, it has become so apparent, with the value in Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, like these veterans are losing value incredibly quickly. And I want to be ahead of that because I'm looking at the Dynasty ADP, and I can get Derrick Henry in a Dynasty startup around RB17, which that's still some pretty steep draft capital here when we're talking about a 29-year-old running back who ranks 3rd in career touches among active running backs. Like, he's got the miles on the tire, he's got the age. Like, there is going to be a cliff, and I know we think that Derrick Henry is going to be immune to it, but I don't know that he is. And I don't know that I want to be the last person holding Derrick Henry on my roster when that value tanks, because I think it's going to happen quickly.
I think it's this year for a lot of different reasons. Number one, this is this final year of his contract in Tennessee. There's some void years, but he's gone after this year, right? I just don't see the way that the Titans bring him back, especially after drafting Tajay Spears in the 3rd round this year. They spent an early day 3 pick on Hassan Haskins last year. It just feels very much like they know that this is probably the last year. And if Derrick Henry is on a different team, he's just not going to get the workload that he got in Tennessee, where you could pencil him in for 20 touches every single week. And who knows, there's a chance that it just completely falls off the cliff after this year and he's out of the NFL, or he's a free agent going into June and July and August, like Dalvin Cook, like Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt. You guys know all the names by now. The hard part is selling him. Now, I think there's going to be somebody in your league that's going to be interested. And we've seen a lot of trades. It's just, what do you sell him for? I'll give you some recent trades. You tell me whether you're moving on from him. Let's just assume you're a middling contender, right? You're somebody who is a borderline playoff team. Derrick Henry for Isaiah Pacheco, straight up.
I'll probably stick with Derrick Henry.
I would agree. I'd rather have the 1 year of him just being the guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Derrick Henry or Rachaad White and a second-round pick in 2024.
Ooh. I probably still stick with Derrick Henry.
I'm on the same boat there as well. Now, Derrick Henry or the 110 in this year's draft. So let me ask you this. At the 110 in a non-super flex league, who are you hoping to get at that slot? Is it like Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, one of those type of receivers?
Probably. Or me. I love some Kendre Miller. I might get a Kendre Miller in that mix. I'd probably there. I'm leaning closer towards the pick if I can get a. But again, I feel like, the challenge comes because if you are a middle of the pack team and you want to evaluate Derrick Henry's prospects, you either Derrick Henry is going to be, whether you move on from him or you keep him, that feels like you making the decision of whether you're trying to contend or whether you're the sheer act of selling Derrick Henry, if you are a middle of the pack team, I do think is you taking the road of rebuild. And of course, there's plenty of exceptions to that rule, but I think that's Derrick Henry feels like the kind of asset where you need to look at your roster and make a clear, definite decision. Do I want to rebuild? Do I want to blow it up? Or do I want to go all in? And that's going to decide your path.
Probably if you have Derrick Henry in your dynasty leagues right now, there's probably only going to be one or two managers that are interested in acquiring Henry. And it's probably the guys that are drafted at pick 111 and 112, because they're probably looking at the same thing. Like, okay, do I take Kendre Miller, who is going to be in a timeshare at best right away? Or do I just trade this pick for Derrick Henry and add an RB1 for basically nothing, and I'll run him for a year, and I'm going to contend for a championship right away? That's probably it. There are
there's a world where maybe you hold him right now, and I think that's probably the smartest thing to do. Hold him, and as the injuries, because injuries occur nonstop, so maybe that's the route, right? If you want to sell Derrick Henry, don't do it now. Yeah. Don't do it right now, but wait until we get those first, kind of injuries. And even once Dalvin Cook signs, Ezekiel Elliott, once these free agents start to sign and wreck some more of the value around the league, that might be your opportunity to dangle Derrick Henry and say, I've got the workhorse for 2023.
My only fear with that, Kate, is what if the Titans are just really bad this year, which I think is very realistic. And by the trade deadline, they're either sellers or they're just like, hey, we're going to start playing some of your young guys. That would be my only fear. But I think you're right. After a month of the season, we're going to find out if Cam Akers is really, the running back one with the Rams, if Rachaad White is actually, fantasy viable. That probably is the time to move on from Derrick Henry. So, Kate, we've got one more player we want to talk about, one upside play on this offense that we're at least holding on to right now before we make a move. We will talk about that next. All right, we are back talking about the Tennessee Titans heading into the 2023 season. Kate, who is the one player in this offense that you're holding and just waiting to see what's going to happen?
Gotta be tight end Chig Okonkwo, who had a fantastic rookie season, by the way. Drafted by the Tennessee Titans in 2022, fourth-round pick out of Maryland. The thing is with Chig, he's a small tight end. He's a real small tight end, 6'3", 238 pounds. So actually not that far off in terms of like body composition from Treylon Burks, if we're being honest. But
he's closer to Treylon than he is Derrick Henry.
Yes, like that. It for size comparison, I'd love to see the three of them just in a straight line. Because I don't think I think you're right, Marcus. I think he'd be much closer to Treylon Burks, but coming out of Maryland wasn't necessarily a star receiver, but career high 448 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns in his final season with the team. As a rookie, managed to surpass his best collegiate season, 450 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns in a really bad offense. But where you see the upside, right? Led all tight ends with a 2.61 yards per route run rate, ranked, like I said, led all tight ends with a minimum of 10 targets, ranked 3rd among tight ends in PFF receiving grade. Decent blocker. Like, you see the upside, and you look at his athletic profile, and that's where you see some of that spark. Ran a 4.52 40-yard dash, ranks 94th percentile among tight ends. Almost 36-inch vertical jump, 77th percentile among tight ends. Like, if I don't think, based on his body composition, that you're banking on him to be this star stunner blocker tight end, but I think he's good enough to keep him on the field, keep him playing in line. But his small frame gives him so much versatility, and I think he's a guy that I don't necessarily know what to do with. But then I look at the ADP, tight end 15, and for the kind of upside that you get in a young tight end who reasonably, I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ranked 2nd in team targets in his 2nd season as a NFL tight end. Suddenly tight end 15 doesn't feel like such a bad value.
No, not at all. And this is the reason I'm the most excited about him. So this is PFF numbers, yards after the catch per reception, players that play at least 25 snaps. I'm going to read you the names in order. You ready?
Okay.
Number 5, Travis Kelce. I've heard of him. He's not bad. Number 4, David Njoku. Number 3, George Kittle. Number 2, Dallas Goedert. Number 1, Chig Okonkwo, who averaged almost 8 yards after the catch per reception last year. He's not going to be able to sustain that. It's unreal. But his calling card at the NFL is being able to make plays after the catch, right? Get him the ball in the flats, let him be heroic after the catch. And if the Titans are playing a rookie quarterback or a second-year quarterback this year, I think they're going to want to try to design really easy layup throws to just get that quarterback in rhythm, probably Will Levis. And I think Okonkwo is the perfect kind of little outlet option. I won't be surprised if he is pretty clearly the number 2 passing option in this offense. And if it only costs me, tight end 14, tight end 15 to get him, I'm in.
Yeah, some recent trades. This is just here in the last week. Chig Okonkwo for a 2024 second round pick.
Oh my gosh, come on.
Chig Okonkwo for a 2024 4th round pick.
Oh my guys, what are we doing?
Okay, maybe he's a buy. Maybe we screwed this whole segment up, Marcus. Maybe he's a buy. Because the value feels insane.
I'm probably not giving up a ton to get him because I think this passing offense is going to be, the pie is going to be pretty small, right? So he's going to probably have to be very efficient, but I'm not giving up on him to go chase a Luke Musgrave or a Dawson Knox or a Luke Schoonamaker or anything like that. So let's just wait and see. Let's hear the buzz out of training camp, see what he looks like in preseason, because I won't be surprised if this is our breakout tight end this year.
Yeah, and I do think, like, for the listeners who maybe aren't in the trenches of Twitter, for all of you everydayers who maybe are in some more casual leagues, this is, you probably need to go trade for him like today. Because I do think as we get through training camp, there's going to be a lot of buzz for this guy. And he's going to be one of, like Austin Hooper was last year. I contributed to some of that hype accidentally. But like, I do feel like he was impossible to trade for last year. Once you started to get some reports out of training camp and you started to get some of that hype, even though he wasn't a high value tight end, you couldn't trade for him. So I go out, I trade for Chig. But if you're already a proud manager, hold
on. Enjoy the ride, right?
Yeah.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Just a quick scheduling note, no episode on Friday, but Kate, you and I will be back on Monday to talk about those Denver Broncos. So make sure you guys tune in for that. Go follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Dynasty. Kate's doing some fantastic work with that Twitter handle. So check it out. Go over, look at our YouTube channel. We've got content coming up every single day. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you right back here on Monday.